Welcome back to another video in Finding Freedom. So I know the title's gonna make you be mind-boggled, but question is the devil actually a warden? So on and so forth. Now, when you read different spiritual books, so on and so forth, in text, when it comes to the devil, Lucifer, Morning Star, whatever you want to call him, Samael, Beelzebub, Baphomet, so on and so forth, etc. These are different titles and labels. Now, when I read spiritual texts, doesn't matter which ones, it always has a dilemma of good versus evil. Now, if you've seen class, you know how that my brain works a little bit when it comes to creativity, logic, art, science, and spirituality. And these are my general, opinions and ideas of how things get not only formulated, but get misconstrued slightly. So in spiritual texts, it talks about how Lucifer, or the devil, was put in charge of the earth, so on and so forth, with the fallen angels as well as the demons and so on and so forth that they possessed. Now, when I read the text in depth and I, get this collaboration with other books such as the New King James Version, the New International Version, the Good Book, there's another one that's meant specifically for people that are former military, I got a better understanding. And the conclusion that I came to was, well, since Lucifer fell with all these angels and all these things happened after they fell. If you saw my other video or my last video of class, I go into the book of Enoch and I explain what the fallen angels have shown people, so on and so forth. You get an idea, right? But the thing is, the way it's described in a lot of them, when you look at the common denominator, is that he's more of a warden, like a warden at a prison, so on and so forth, than the ruler of the facility. See, a warden may have jurisdiction, control over the facility, but essentially the state, the federal government, so on and so forth, and the chain of command still applies. So when I hear people talk about these secret societies and how they worship the devil and do this devil worship and satanic, this, that, and the third, the only way I could picture it is that they're kissing the warden's ass for favors in the future, right? Because what happens when you go to jail or prison, I've been to jail 1 or 2 times, so on and so forth. Nothing that was extremely, criminal related. I, had a little incident out in town. They put me in, the facility until, they were like, hey, are you okay? So on and so forth, etc. But that's just me being honest. But I also had friends that went to jail and went to prison, and they always talk about doing favors, not only for the guards, but for the warden. Maybe they have a troublesome inmate, so on and so forth, and the warden gives them carte blanche to do what they need to, and he covers for them, so on and so forth. Maybe they need extra cigarettes, some favors, so on and so forth. So they do the warden a favor, who then has jurisdiction and charge over the guards, which grants them leniency to get away with certain things, or have things such as conjugal visits, so on and so forth, maybe fitting 1 or 2 extra ones in there. Maybe it is getting out for a day, so on and so forth, to experience fresh air, whatever the case may be. But I strongly encourage you in this short video, because yes, I was raised Catholic, but I say I'm spiritual because I experimented with different religions and I came down to the fact that it's all spiritual text. However, religion has certain rules and parameters in place that were placed there afterwards by humans. So to me, religion is man-made or human. Spirituality is the understanding that it is a continuation story as well as building upon one another, right? Because if you look at certain things, everything from Hinduism all the way up to Christianity, it evolves and changes slightly, and it also mixes in some ideas or stories that have been, creatively rewritten from also mythology, right? To not only, dictate certain things. And I know some of you in here may say, oh, well, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, but stick with me here. Yes, it's creatively rewritten, right? And what do I mean by this? Well, if you look at Gilgamesh and the Great Flood and Noah and all these other stories, you will hear about a great flood in other spiritual texts, right? But as you proceed through everything, it kind of evolves, right? So it takes care of the human body, it takes care of psychology and everything else. The thing is the reason why it was creatively rewritten was because of the prosecution of those that were actual believers and students that understood the terminology at hand, hence the mystery schools, which went into depth to explain what it actually meant when you were reading the quote-unquote jargon, the quote-unquote Harry Potter language, the quote-unquote literature or vocabulary, and understanding the etymology and the power that it has. Because let's face it, if the power of life or death rests upon the tongue, then your words and everything else have power if you know what you are saying. Remember, you can have the freedom of speech, but you'll get canceled if you know what you're saying within your exercising of your First Amendment right, because, well, sometimes people with power and control that are also in the know, that can talk too, are wanting to not only defend their position, but hold on to that power. So I encourage you to go out, venture out, study in depth the etymology. Where did that word come from? Why was it said like this? In Genesis, when it talks about the valleys in Eden, how does it correlate to the human body and the heart and the way the arteries flow inward and outward? Since there was 4 rivers, right? Or 2 rivers going in and then 2 going out, making a total of 4. But then that, of course, correlates to the heart and other things, so on and so forth, within the human body. And you have to look at the metaphor, analogy, and entendre, because remember, not only were other people and other religions prosecuted, Christians were heavily prosecuted and put to death. And if you don't believe me, ask yourself, why are there so many martyrs within that religion? Think about it. Right? Because if the money was being made in a certain area and you found a way to solve that problem that they were making money from, you're messing with people's money. And when you mess with people's money, time, energy, and attention, they normally want to retaliate. So remember this. Take it as a grain of salt, but to me, the devil is like a warden over a prison or jail, right? You heard JFK, jail for kids, right? So on and so forth. We are all God's children, and there's a chain of command. So if the devil is the warden, you might want to plea your case to the great architect or the creator, so on and so forth, who presides over the court, because at the end of the day, even the devil will get brought in for questioning. Till next time, my friends, I will see you guys on another video of Finding Freedom. Peace.